much to once again to welcome you to Let's on African Motives. Today I want us to do business studies grade 10, term 1, and we are going to do chapter 1, which is nodes on micro environment. Nodes on micro environment. So as you can see here, it says content details for teaching and learning and assessment purpose. So learners must be able to achieve the following points that are mentioned. So we can just go through them. So let us quickly go to business environments. So let us quickly go to business environments, where we are going to talk about micro environment or internal environment. So we're going to talk about the meaning of micro environment or internal environment. So this is where we are today. So as it says, it is the environment within which a business operates and consists of the business itself. So we are talking about what inside the business. We're talking about what inside the business. Inside the business. Meaning to say, when we're saying like when we are saying inside the business, we are trying to see it covers everything that happens within the company's own borders. So we're talking about the employees, managers, cultures, policies, resources, as well as objectives that are within the business itself. Hope we are together. It further on say it is the decision-making environment because management make decisions that help the business achieve its goals. So that is that. Meaning to say, we're talking about what? Decision-making arena. We're talking about decision-making arena. Decision-making arena. Meaning to say, we are trying to say managers have direct control here. They have what? Direct control. So every decision they make, we can talk about hiring, budgeting, product design, shapes how the firm pursues its goals. That is why we are saying in this decision-making environment, because management make decision. They make decision that is going to help the business to achieve its goals. So that is why I say the managers have direct control for every decision they make. It can also be referred to as the immediate environment in which business operates and includes internal factors of the business. So here we are talking about immediate surroundings. We're talking about immediate surroundings. Immediate surrounding because it is internal. It is closest, most tangible environment the business deals with in every day. Hope we are together, good people. Oh. Number 2, components. Components, features, elements of the microenvironment. So here are the components of microenvironment. These are the vision, mission, objectives, goal strategy, organizational resources, leadership and management, business function, organizational structure, as well as organizational culture. So let us go where they are explained, the explanation of these elements of the micro environment or the components of the micro environment. So we are now going to give the explanation of those components. So we are talking about a vision. What is a vision? So a vision is a statement. Is a statement. It's a statement that shows what the business wants to become. That shows what the business wants to become. In the future. In the future. That is a vision statement. So the brief explanations of this is that they are saying vision refers to a statement that explains what the business aims to achieve. For example, to be a leading bakery in South Africa. That is that. That's the example that you can give. To be a leading bakery in South Africa. So that is that. That's why I say it refers to a statement that explains what a business wants to achieve. So what the business wants to achieve is that it wants to be a leading bakery in South Africa. Hope we understand. Also, the vision answer to the question, where are we going from here? Where are we going from here? It answers that question. For example, can be expanding to all provinces in the next 10 years. As a baker, we want to expanding to all provinces in the next 10 years. In the next 10 years. So this is what we are going from here. We want to expand to all of these 9 provinces in the next 10 years. So that's how we're going to answer the question, where are we going from here? So let us move on. It sets out the business needs to go to be successful. So it sets out where the business needs to go to be successful. Where the business needs to go to be to be successful. So for example, we can say opening more branches to grow customer base. Opening new branches. Opening more branches. Opening more. Sorry. Opening more branches. Opening more branches to grow the customer base. Grow the customer base. Set out where the business needs to go to be successful. So that is when now you want to open more branches so as to grow the customer base, so as to win more market share, so that you can increase your market share in that. So then it talks about the dream of the business and what it wants to achieve in the future. The dream of the business and what it wants to achieve in future. That is that. So example, becoming global brand. That is the dream of the business. Becoming what? Global brand. Becoming global. So that is the dream of what? Of the business. Also gives business a clear idea of what they want to achieve. It gives business a clear idea of what they want to achieve. For example, providing quality food to every community. So you see, the vision now is going to give what a clear idea of what the business want to achieve. So that's why we make an example of saying providing quality food to every community. That is that. Inspiring statement about what the business wants the future to look like. So here we are saying inspiring the statement about the future. So example, a healthier South Africa through fresh food. That is that. That is the inspiring statement about what the business wants the future to look like. Vision also explains what the business wants to achieve, taking into consideration its purpose. So, meaning to say, it explains long-term purpose. It explains long-term purpose. For example, creating long-term job opportunities. Then it says example to provide job opportunities for the local community. So that is that to provide job opportunities for the local community. So now let us come to the mission statement now. So a mission statement explains why the business exists. Why the business exists. Why the business exists and what it does daily. And what it does daily. That is that. What if you want the mission statement? So it says a statement that explains the reason for the business existence. Reason for business existence. You already know what? Reason for business existence. Meaning we are talking about when you can make an example, practical example like a school exists to provide what? Education. A school exists to provide education. That's the reason. That is the reason for the business existence. It enables business to develop strategies to achieve their vision. So helps develop strategies to achieve what? The vision. So for example, training staff to improve what? Services. That is when they train the staff to improve what? The services. The answer to the question such as what the business do to make profit answers what is our business. So it answers what is our business. That is what we say. Answers what is our business. For example, we sell affordable clothing. That is what our business is all about. It explains what the business does to achieve its vision. What the business does to achieve its vision. So, meaning to say, it explains how business plans to exist. So, we are saying it explains how the business plans to achieve to succeed. For example, using high quality materials to attract buyers. So this is how they plan to achieve. They are using high quality so as to attract more customers. Gives clear direction on how business intend to achieve its vision. So here we're talking about the direction for achieving the vision. You were talking about what? Direction for achieving the vision. So, for example, if vision be world class, mission produce the best product. If our vision was be world class, it means our mission is to produce the best products. That's what why the business is existing and why what it does daily. So what you're going to do daily is that you're going to produce the best products so that you can be what? World class. Describe the purpose and basic activities of the business. So here it describes what purpose and basic activities of the basic activities. For example, producing and selling fresh bread daily. For example, this is bread, remember. Producing and selling fresh bread daily. So that describes the purpose and basic activities. Also, example to become a world-class communication company. That is example given again. So let us move on to goals. Let's move on to goals. So we know that goals are long-term aims. Goals are long-term aims. The business wants to achieve. Business wants to achieve. These are what? The goals. So they say goals can be defined as the long-term objectives of what the business wants to achieve. So we're talking about what? Long-term objectives. Here we're talking about long-term objectives. So, for example, increase market share in 5 years. So that is your goal. You want to increase market share in 5 years. So that is your long-term objectives. Goals break down the business objectives into specific measurable parts. So we say goals break business aims into measurable parts. For example, increase profit by 20% next year. So you see, we are breaking that business aims into measurable parts because now you're saying we want to increase profit by 20% next year. So here they even make an example, increase profit margin by 50% in 2020. That is another example. So goals give the business sense of direction. So they give what? Goals give direction. Goals give direction. For example, helps employee know what to work towards. That is that. So direction helps employees to know what to work towards. So now let us come to objectives now. Objectives. So objectives are short-term steps to achieve the goals. These are short-term steps. Short-term steps to achieve the goals. As it says, short-term tasks or steps to reach goals. We are talking about what? Short-term task. We are talking about short-term task. short-term tasks. For example, sell 500 units this month. So those are the short-term tasks. Sell 500 units this month. Contain deadline for achievement. Objectives contain deadline for achievement. So we are saying objectives have deadlines. Objectives have deadlines. For example, launch website by March. Launch website by March. You see, so we have a deadline because you see we're going to launch the website by March. Explains how the rules of the business will be reached. So explain how rules will be reached. So explains how rules will be reached. Meaning to say, as for example, if a goal is to increase sales, objective is to improve the ad rates. The objective is to improve what? The ad rates. Remember, objectives are short-term steps to achieve what? The goal. So if our goal is to increase the sales in 5 years to come, so it means for us to increase the sales, it forces us to make sure that we're going to improve our ad rates so that customers or potential buyers are going to be aware of our business. Explains targets and strategies that will help the business fulfill its mission. So here we're talking about target and strategies. Targets and strategies. For example, you train staff for better customer service. That is that. So the purpose of the business, for example, a business may have a primary objective of making a profit and a secondary objective of social upliftment. So we are talking about the primary and secondary objective. Primary and secondary objectives. So that's that. So if our example is primary is to make profit, secondary is to uplift what? The community, social upliftment. So now let us come to the strategy now. Let us come to strategy. A strategy. A strategy is a long-term plan on how the business will achieve its goals, on how the business will achieve its goals. That is a strategy. Like I said, the strategy outlines how the business will achieve its vision in line with its mission statements and objectives. So how the business will achieve its vision and mission. For example, using the online marketing to reach more customers. That's the strategy. It is a plan of an action taken by top management to achieve their vision. So, for example, as we are saying, the action plan taken by top management, expanding to new markets. So that is the plan or action that is taken by top management. So now let us move on to the purpose now of the organizational culture. Purpose of the organizational culture. That is that. So when you're talking of the organizational culture, we're talking about is if the values, the values, the values, beliefs, and behavior in a business. In a business. That's what you want to the what do you call the organizational culture. I want to hear of what organizational culture. What do you about views, beliefs, and behavior in the business? So it influences people's actions and attitudes. Influences actions and attitudes. How so? Can make an example. Friendly stuff equals to positive culture. That is that influences people's actions and attitudes. So if we have a friendly stuff, means our result is that we're going to have what? Positive culture. The culture determines how things are done. Determines how things are done. For example, rules for customer service. Very about rules for customer service. It is a personality of the business. So, for example, we can talk of professional and relaxed and formal. That's what we want. The personality of the business. Personality of the business is a professional. You can see a professionality in the business. Very relaxed organization and very formal. Shared understanding how things are done in a business. So when we're talking about share of understanding, that's when you can say everyone knows expected behavior because it is shared. The shared understanding. So everyone knows expected behavior. Every business has a culture that is influenced by everyone who is part of it. So we say every business has a culture that is that. For example, a school culture of respect. That's the business or school culture. So it is based on three key issues: values, beliefs, and purpose. Examples: dress code, office decor, employee behavior. So it's based on values and beliefs. So as we are talking about dress code, to office layout, and stuff. Also influences the way in the organization interact with each other and with stakeholders. So we can talk about a respectful culture, which is going to result with better teamwork. Respectful culture is equals to better teamwork. That's why we are saying it influences the way people in the organization interact with each other, with stakeholders. We're talking about that teamwork. If we have what? A respectful culture. Let us move on. So here we are on the examples of business culture. Examples of business culture. We're talking about personality ethos of the business. So, for example, when you're talking about personality ethos of the business, you can talk about friendly service culture. You talk about friendly service culture. Friendly service culture. And then it says norms and values and expectations. So with norms and values and expectations, we can talk about always be on time. Always be on time. These are the norms and values as well as expectations. So employees are expected to always be on time. Now, business code of conduct. Business code of conduct. Example, no stealing or bullying. No stealing or bullying. So you are not to steal at workplace and bully others. Flow plan of the business. Flow plan of the business. For example, we can talk about open plan office for teamwork. Open plan office for teamwork. For teamwork. The working environment of the business. The working environment of the business. So here we can talk, I can make an example of clean and safe workplace. Clean and safe workplace. Respect for other employees' views. So you want respecting different cultures. Respecting different cultures. Respecting different cultures. The way managers are addressed. So how managers are addressed, for example, calling them by title. Calling them by title. That's how you're going to address their managers. Calling them by title. EG manager, Mr. Tabo, like that. So that is that. Now we come to types of organizational resources. Types of organizational resources. As it says, organizational resources. So here are the organizational resources. As it is, these are the assets that business uses to produce goods or services and achieve its goals. So the following four groups of resources are controlled by management. So they are under the supervision and control of the management. So the four groups that we talk about is the physical resource or operating resources, financial resources, human resources. No, we're talking about human resources, we're talking about people, information and technology resources. So coming to physical resources or operating, this is where we're going to talk about natural resources, raw materials, machinery, vehicles, building infrastructure, assets from nature such as water, minerals, and wood. But with financial resources, we're talking about capital, own capital, cash, bank overdrafts, short and medium term loans, money invested in the business to acquire production goods such as land, building, and machinery. But when we're talking about human resources, we're talking about people, employees, or contractors. But when it comes to IT now, information and technology resources, we're talking about technology, the use of computers, research, production technology. So now let us come to explanation of these types of organizational resources. Explanation of the types of or types of organizational resources. So we're first going to start by the human resource. So human resources we know very well are people with skills and knowledge. We're talking about people with skills and knowledge. So as they're saying, people with knowledge and skills such as employees, consultants, managers, and executives. So the people needed to perform the work and keep the organization functioning. People who contribute towards achieving the goals of the business. That's what I'm talking about human resources. Those people who are equipped with knowledge, who are competent enough to deliver at the workplace. So let us move on. Now we come to natural resources. Now we deal with raw materials in, from nature. from nature. As you are saying, these are natural resources. Example, you can talk of water, you can talk of wood, you can talk of minerals. So as it is, assets from nature that are used to offer services and products such as minerals, water as well as wood, we've said. But physical resources now, with physical resources, you're dealing with equipment and tools. Again, about equipment and tools. Example, machinery, office furniture. So as this include materials, office furniture, equipment, machinery, plan necessary to operate the business successfully. That is that. But when it comes to financial or capital resources, we are talking about money. Money used to run the business. Money used to run the business. For example, it will bank loans, investments. This is money invested into business to acquire production goods such as land, buildings, and machinery. So it can be in the form of cash or bank, overdrafts or short and medium term loan. Hope we are together. Now let us move on. So here we are now on technological resources. We are now on technological resources. The resources, we are talking of tools. We are talking about tools. Tools that use technology. Tools that use technology. Tools that use technology. Example, you're talking of computers, you're talking about emails, and etc. Like these resources that include computers, voicemail, emails, production technology, that gives the business an advantage over its competitors. So now we come to entrepreneurial resources. We are coming to entrepreneurial resources. We're talking about the owner who makes decisions. We're talking about the owner who makes decisions. Who makes decisions. Owner who make decisions. So for example, business founder. So that is the person responsible for combining the factors of production in such a way that the business will make what? Profit. That's what we're talking about it. And entrepreneurial resource. That is that. Now we come to organizational structure. The importance of business organizational structure. The importance of business organizational structure. So, meaning we said organizational structure shows who reports to whom and how the business is arranged. Shows who reports to whom and how the business is arranged. And how the business is arranged. How the business is arranged. For example, an organogram showing the manager, supervisor, as well as workers. What is the organogram that you're talking about? So as it says, it shows who report to who and which department fall under which managers. But is that really about the organogram? The structure shows the flow of instruction and feedback in the business. Every business must be organized into a structure that shows each person's task, the level of authority, as well as the responsibility. So it is the hierarchy, like we've said, it's an organogram that shows the position of management, the departments, and its employees. So that is that. Now we come to the difference now. Difference between leadership and management. Difference between leadership and management. So here we're talking about leadership versus management. So when you're talking about leadership, we are talking about people who inspire and motivate people to achieve work. So you're talking about inspires, you're talking about leadership now. Inspires and motivates people to achieve goals. People to achieve goals. That's what you're talking about what leadership. Example, a leader encourages employees to work hard. That's that. But with management now, with management, we are saying focuses on planning, focuses on planning, organizing, focus on planning, organizing, and making news and making sure tasks are done. And making sure tasks are done. So management is whereby the four functions of management are going to be carried out. We're talking about planning, organizing, leading, as well as controlling. So that is that. So it says under management, managers ensure tasks are given to subordinates and are completed. While these leaders inspire other people to do the work. That is that. Managers are task-oriented. They are task-oriented. All they do is to make sure that the task is done on time. The task is given to subordinate. But with this leadership, people-oriented. They are not task, but people-oriented. They inspire people. They are innovators. They give ideas to people. They interact with people. They motivate people. That's why we are saying they are people-oriented. But management uses instructional approach. Why? Leadership uses motivational approach. This one, they motivate people to do it. Managers hold managerial position in the business. A leader does not hold managerial position in the business. Management is the process of achieving business goals. Leadership is the process of inspiring and influencing others to achieve business goals. So that's that. So here we are. The managers guides human behavior while least the leaders influence human behavior. Managers communicate through management functions, easy learn function, while leaders communicate by means of interaction, behavior, vision, values, as well as charisma. A person becomes manager because he or she is appointed in the position. Leaders are born with natural. They are born with natural, instinctive leadership skills. Managed by planning, organizing, leading, and control. So managers carry out this or functions of management, while leaders lead by examples, trust, and respect. So these are the difference between managers, management, and leadership. And this is the end of the presentation for today. And we'll move on again in the next presentation, still under term 1. Business Studies Grade 10. So thank you very much for your time. Please share with others and please, good people, don't forget to hit the subscription button. I thank you.